When Justice League entered into production, the creative team wanted to evoke the comics of their youth. Heroic adventure stories with clear good guys and bad guys. But shortly before the first episode aired, the September 11th terror attacks took place, and suddenly this old-school adventure series started to feel a little quaint. As such, in the second season, more morally sophisticated stories started to appear until the show was rebranded as Justice League Unlimited and it became deeply political. The Cadmus storyline in particular was about governmental overreach and tainting their own values in order to feel safe. And that point was really hammered home in the episode Patriot Act. So first things first, we need to briefly discuss the episode's title. The USA PATRIOT Act was a piece of legislation signed into law by then-President George W. Bush in October 2001, a few weeks after the September 11th terror attack. Now, I never knew this, but the name is an acronym for Uniting and Strengthening America by Providing Appropriate Tools Required to Intercept and Obstruct Terrorism. This gave the authorities the power to dramatically expand the surveillance, investigative, and enforcement powers of domestic law enforcement and international intelligence agencies. Essentially, it gave lawmakers the power to do pretty much whatever they liked so long as they had reasonable suspicion that their target was involved in terrorism. The act was heavily criticised by civil liberties groups for bypassing traditional judicial oversight, fundamentally altering the balance between government power and individual privacy in the name of national security. So you may very well be wondering what this has to do with Justice League Unlimited, and I am so glad you asked. The episode Patriot Act is a direct allegory for the ideological and moral costs of this real-world legislation. Just as the USA Patriot Act expanded governmental reach to stop potential future threats, in Justice League Unlimited, General Eiling operates out of preemptive paranoia. The Justice League hasn't attacked Earth, but Eiling violates laws, assaults a guard, and weaponizes a banned serum because of what he believes the League might do. Now, from his perspective, he has seen them use their space cannon to hold back the Darkheart nanomachine weapons, and the prospect of a bunch of superpowered unelected people hovering over his country with a gun pointing down filled him with dread. This evokes how post 9/11 many Americans are forced to face the very violent reality that residents of other countries faced on a daily basis. While far from the first terror attack to take place on American soil, it was easily the most deadly. Essentially, Eiling's core identity and belief in his country's might was challenged by the League's existence, regardless of their intentions, and he felt he needed to do something about it. And oh boy, doesn't he just take things way too far. While reading classified documents, Eiling learns of the Captain Nazi project during World War II, where the Germans developed an unstable super soldier serum that created Captain Nazi. As told during the flashback, the Allies were able to get their hands on a sample of the serum and destroyed the lab, but the scientists warned that it was an unstable compound and could have unpredictable results. And unpredictable results sounded just great to General Eiling. So there's the metaphor. General Wade Eiling steals a Nazi super soldier formula, uses it on himself and becomes a hideous beast, all in the name of protecting his country from some imagined threat. To protect American sovereignty, the military state willingly infects itself with fascism. This mirrors how critics viewed the USA Patriot Act, that America compromised its foundational values, the belief in privacy and civil liberties, to stay safe, regardless of if they were really in any danger or not. Now, what I really like about this analogy is how they took inspiration from the comics but completely changed things up. During Grant Morrison's JLA run in the 1990s, General Eiling learned he had cancer and had his mind transferred to the synthetic being the Shaggy Man. And I'll try not to dwell on this too long, but the Shaggy Man was a 1960s Justice League villain who was built by a mad scientist as an ultimate form of life. It had impossible strength, regenerative abilities, and lustrous locks. But being an army man, once Eiling took control, he had all the hair shaved off. So you can already see how the team streamlined that idea. Eiling doesn't take over an artificial caveman-looking thing. He injects himself with a Nazi super soldier formula and becomes a beast. And what I like most is how Eiling operates completely outside of the chain of command, disregarding the warnings of Amanda Waller, essentially deciding that he knows best despite what the experts say. In doing this, Eiling becomes the threat that he was worried about, and that's the biggest message of this episode. In his obsessive quest to eliminate a perceived external threat, Eiling enters a peaceful domestic space, a metropolis parade, and becomes the actual engine of terror, leaving the citizens to realize that the government's protection is more dangerous than the original threat. And while Eiling has dreams of stomping Superman, The only Justice Leaguers available are your more normal costumed heroes. None of them have powers, in fact they're all Golden Age superheroes or versions of them. Characters that debuted during a simpler time in the 1930s and 40s, where there were clear good guys and clear bad guys. Each of these characters were a member of the superhero group called the Seven Soldiers of Victory, who seem quaint by today's standards. So you've got these two eras, the bright and simple heroes who put on a costume to do good and are widely accepted by society, versus the more modern, edgy Eiling who wants to make mincemeat out of them. But within these eras there are subdivisions of heroism. You have Sir Justin, a medieval knight, Vigilante, a cowboy, Green Arrow, Speedy and Crimson Avenger representing the pulpy costumed vigilantes, and Stargirl and Stripe, who are tech-based heroes. They all represent different eras of heroism and they are united against Eiling's brand of justice. Now, for as much as Eiling says that he's doing this to keep America safe, really it's all about his wounded ego. At the episode's start, he meets Amanda Waller for dinner and vents about how frustrated he is about their current situation. Yes, they almost destroyed the world because they trusted Lex Luthor, but it's the Justice League that's the real problem. They may seem like the good guys now, but what if they're lying? Superman had trounced Cadmus with minimal effort when they kidnapped the Question. What if they do something else he doesn't like? Then what? While the Justice League has made compromises, decommissioning their space cannon and moving their base of operations to the Metro Tower in Metropolis, Eiling doesn't trust them. But it's all because his pride was wounded and he has been reassigned to desk duty. He tries to find an ally in Waller, likening it to the Cold War, but Waller tells him it's a new world and he has to find a way to live in it. And that is precisely what he does. And this leads me to the neat comparison between Eiling and one of the Justice Leaguer's Shining Knight. Sir Justin is an Arthurian knight who may be displaced in time, but he still upholds the values of his era. He may find some aspects of modernity distasteful, as illustrated by his criticism of Clint Eastwood's Dirty Harry, who he says besmirches his badge with his conduct, but rather than lashing out he instead hopes to inspire others through the way that he acts, although he does note that being in a parade feels like it's beneath him. But when Eiling attacks looking for Superman, he lands like a bomb out of nowhere. Eiling wants to face Superman to show the world that there's someone capable of standing up to the League, someone that will protect the common man. And it's an odd definition of protection, hurling cars in the direction of civilians, attacking policemen, and showering the streets with shards of glass. Similarly, he batters Stripe, ripping open his battlesuit with his bare hands, ready to go for the kill. It's a group of children who are modelled after Jack Kirby's Newsboy Legion, more Golden Age characters evocative of that simpler time, that intervene with a wrecking ball. Eiling's response is ruthless, flipping over the wrecking ball and causing the boy to almost fall to his death. Yes, this episode really hammers home the point. When your actions endanger the people you're supposedly saving, can you really call yourself heroic? It firmly argues no. Eiling may dress it up as acceptable losses and likening their deaths to making an omelette, but he is unequivocally wrong. And this message is really hammered home with Shining Knight, who is the last hero standing. He tells Eiling how once King Arthur had ordered him to lay waste to an entire village, but he refused to do it. In the end, Arthur thanked him for having a clearer head, but Eiling describes him as being a lousy soldier. In Eiling's mind, the ends justify the means, and he tries passing his acts off as the needs of the many outweighing the needs of the few. But again, really, he's serving his own needs, his own fragile masculinity. Sir Justin, meanwhile, refuses to back down, fully aware that he cannot defeat Eiling, but he continues to fight anyway because it is the right thing to do. Eiling can't stand not being the top dog, and he has essentially turned himself into what he claims to hate because of it. He states that power is the only thing that matters. Ordinary people like Sir Justin and these other Leaguers are insignificant in the grand scheme of things, and this is quite the step down from his earlier claims of wanting to protect the little people from the big bad Justice League. But when the civilians rally around Sir Justin to protect him and ask Eiling how many of them he has to kill in order to keep them safe, his logical argument completely falls apart. He claims the metahumans are a threat to America's safety, but he's the only metahuman here. The Justice League was part of a parade to celebrate everyday heroes like policemen and firefighters, and it was Eiling that disrupted that. The only person the people need to be protected from is him. And with that, Eiling concedes the point. Yes, he has become a monster, but he wagers that the only person that will be able to protect them from the Justice League when they inevitably go rogue is him. Eiling was not defeated in a fistfight. All it took was for regular people to point out how monstrous his actions were. For all of its post-9/11 cynicism, the ending of Patriot Act still clings to an idealized fantasy of its own. It argues that a tyrant can be stopped not by a bigger fist, but by a mirror. When the citizens of Metropolis confront Eiling with the glaring hypocrisy of his actions, he stops and retreats. It's a beautifully optimistic ending that the show never quite shook from its early seasons. The idea that truth, clarity and public shame possesses an inherent power to disarm authoritarianism, and that exposing a monster's logic is enough to make them slink away. But looking back at this episode today, that conclusion feels like a relic of a more innocent time. Modern history has shown us a far more stubborn, unforgiving reality. In the decades since this episode aired, we've had to face the fact that real-world forces driven by ideological paranoia, institutional ego or a lust for power don't care about being hypocrites. They don't look in the mirror and realise they've become the villain. When confronted with the human cost of their actions, they double down, brand objective truths that they don't like as fake news, or they simply crush the dissent. If this episode were written now, Eiling wouldn't be stopped by a crowd of onlookers. He would stomp right through them, and the next morning the news crawls wouldn't broadcast the horror of a rogue general. They would broadcast the background checks of the deceased. We live in an era where institutional violence is instantly sanitized by a compliant media designed to protect the state. They would comb through the victims' lives, finding any piece of data to alienate them from the public consciousness, essentially arguing that their deaths didn't matter because they weren't truly one of us, which is really, really horrible. The modern tragedy is that the media rewrites the narrative so that monsters never have to look in the mirror or have a moment of introspection. Patriot Act beautifully imagined a world where words and moral clarity could still halt the march of an unchecked military state, but our modern world has proven that pointing out the monster is rarely enough to stop them from bombing a parade. If you value these unfiltered looks at DC cartoons, then there are a couple of ways that you can help this channel out. First, you can buy a copy of my book Rogues Gallery from Amazon. It has a beautiful cover by Batman the Animated Series background painter John Calmette, a foreword by director Dan Reber, and a moving segment by the late Kevin Conroy. There's also an exclusive essay about the Condiment King that you will never find in a video. Additionally, you can hit that thanks button or become a channel member for $1.99 a month. All channel members get early access to my videos and their names listed over here. Huge thanks to them, because without them, these videos may not be possible. Thank you for watching. Hope to see you next time.